Gaywyck by Vincent Verga. Publisher Allison Books, Los Angeles, New York. Narrator Eric Aust. The holiday arrived. I awoke every day with Cale by my side. His winter fur was thicker and fuller. He looked and felt larger, and his extravagant ruff made him appear round. He lay on his back. I stroked his stomach. He awoke, yawned, stretched, and rolled over, before sitting up and becoming attentive, sensing my excitement. "They come today, Puss," I said, squeezing him in a hug. "They come today." I bathed, dressed, breakfasted, practiced my typewriting and piano, lunched, walked, worked, took tea, read, bathed, and waited. They had not yet arrived at dinner. I was frantic with excitement. "Do we keep you so poorly amused that you can barely contain yourself at the arrival of guests?" "Yes. You know, dear, we are getting on." "Yes, Keith. Ever onward, past the peas." I heard the horses rising from the table with a hasty, "Excuse me." I hurried into the foyer. I could hear laughing outside. Ambrose appeared, lamp in hand. Cale sat on the landing, ever curious. I lurked behind the dancing fawn. The door was open before a knock sounded, bearing leaves like harbingers of good tidings. The wind swept into the foyer and frisked me where I stood. Danough Gaylord was the first to appear, wearing a sable hat and a long sable coat. He stopped on the landing to remove his gloves. Timothy Goodbody, tall as Danough but pale and thin, with an oval face and thick blonde curls, followed, wrapped in brown fur. Laughing, he glanced over his shoulder at Eugene Mortimer, taller than the other two by a head. Mortimer was encased in Persian lamb, dark as his skin. His exquisitely honed features were contorted in a grimace at something one or the other had said. He sighed. He spoke. His voice had a basso timbre that turned the landing into a stage. As always, Cale greets us first. Ambrose took their things. "Sure, Ambrose. It's good to see you again. You're well, I hope." "It is always a pleasure to see you, Mr. Eugene. Welcome to Gaywyck. Mr. Timothy, the others are at table. Will you be joining them, Mr. Danough?" "Yes. We will bring us some brandy. Ambrose, please. Robert, come out from behind that thing and greet my friends." While the men removed their coats and handed them to Ambrose, I crossed as he introduced. Both guests smiled as I approached. Mortimer raised his right eyebrow and chuckled. "So this is the new librarian. You've been so eager for us to know. I don't wonder at your delight, but then I have a predilection for alabaster cherubs." Goodbody laughed. Mr. Danough grinned and blushed. I said how pleased I was to meet them. Goodbody descended the landing steps, extending his right hand in greeting. "Don't mind him, Robert. Not many folks do." Mortimer chuckled again as he moved down to take my hand. "More's the pity. Lead me to the brandy, young man. Tim and Donnie will follow. Is it not boring for you here?" He clasped my arm with his enormous hand, turned me around, and led me ahead of the others toward the dining room. What a beastly trip! Only the bouillabaisse kept me from slipping over the edge. I'm exhausted. Have you ever thought of going on the stage? "No, never." "Me?" "Yes. You could make your fortune in no time at all. We have a client who is a prodigious producer and always on the lookout for a face like yours." "But I don't think I have any talent. Nowadays, no one on the stage has any talent." "What about becoming a partner in our law firm?" "I don't know anything about the law." "Neither does Goodbody. Look how well he's done." Mr. Danough, walking close behind, guffawed. I turned to see excited eyes flash in his rubescent face. He had his arm around Goodbody's shoulder. "You're drunk," I said, laughing happily, having just caught the joke. "You might say that, mightn't he, Eugene?" Goodbody asked in his light, smoky voice. "Yes, Timothy, he might. I certainly would not censure him for doing so. Would you, Gaylord?" "Censure Robbie? Never. It would be like censuring a narcissus, or censuring Vathemia for bearing pink flowers." We reached the dining room. "Who's Vathemia? Is bearing pink flower?" "Have you brought it here for us to see?" asked Danvers, rising from his seat to shake hands with the visitors. There was uproar all around. Keyes literally shrieked with joy and ran into Mortimer's arms. "Oh, my dears, I am thrilled to see you both again. Will you play for us? Please, you must say yes." "Keyes, let him rest a while. We have had a tiresome, foul journey." "Yes, Keyes, of course, I'll play. We brought you a special present." "Some Mailer songs?" "Yes, some new ones, just out here." "I feel faint. I must sit down." Goodbody sighed. He has round indigo eyes. He wore a silk scarf tied around his throat in the style of a French bohemian. "You will play them for me. Just say you will." "He'll play them, Keyes," promised Goodbody, reaching for an orange. "We've been practicing all week for you. Must give away all our secrets." "What are friends for, Mortimer?" "I hadn't realized you two had any left." Danvers laughed. "Oh, dears, I vibrate with pleasure." "You play the piano?" I asked. "Better than I, dear Robert," shouted Keyes. "No one plays better than you, Keyes," Mortimer softly corrected. "I play adequately, Robert." "I'm learning. Keyes is teaching me." "So Danough told us." I smiled shyly, gratefully at Danough Gaylord. He had gave me a shy, inebriated grin in return. Ambrose brought the brandy. Brian carried in cake, ice cream, more fruit, nuts, and coffee. Henry and Teo appeared briefly to say good night. And then we all sat around the table. Goodbody made a toast, winging the words into the air as he raised his glass. "To a marvelous Thanksgiving." I lifted my glass, convinced it would be nothing short of sublime. After several more toasts and 2 pots of coffee, we retired to the music room, where we settled with some anticipation around the piano. Mortimer had gone ahead to locate the music in his baggage, and while in his room had changed into a peacock blue velvet jacket that shimmered softly in the light when he sat down to play. Goodbody stood behind him to turn the pages, I thought. After a few airy chords, he opened his mouth, and the strange, dry tones of his speaking voice bloomed into crystalline tenor sound. Through 6 gregariously dolorous songs, the 2 of them fused into one. It was a most moving experience. Keyes went limp in Denver's arms and was guided to his rooms. Danough sat in silence. With few words, we parted for the night. Goodbody, Mortimer, and Danough Gaylord returned to the first floor. Shyly, I drifted to my own quarters. I could not sleep. I wanted to go for a walk, but the wind was howling and my sense of adventure was exhausted. Only my mind raced. I could not calm myself. I took a very hot bath. I paced the sitting room. Goodbody and Mortimer joined in Mailer's songs and had stirred me too deeply. Goodbody, so blonde, almost as fair as myself, was obviously deeply attached to Mortimer. A man as dark as his shadow and almost as beautiful as Danough Gaylord. I had seen Negro men in upstate New York, but they were laborers with sorrowful eyes and calloused hands. Danvers had told me of Mortimer's princely Haitian heritage, but that had not prepared me for this exotic, graceful creature. Having such a royal friend revealed my employer. And there was Goodbody. While he sang, he had expressed such passion, such sorrow, such longing, and such joy. It was evident his tall, lithe body was fused with an extraordinary soul. Both these gifted men were lodged in rooms next to mine. They would be my companions for the next 4 days. It was too much to bear calmly. I continued pacing the sitting room. I missed Cale, too, but I knew he would be spending most of his time with Danough, who came first in his heart. I need something to read, something soothing. As I stepped into the hall, I realized from the flickering brightness that the door to the next apartment was ajar. I could bear two sweet, rumbling voices exchanging words too softly to be intelligible. I quickened my step so as not to overhear. Like an ear pressed to a keyhole. When Godbody mentioned my name, I stood still. Robbie is lovely looking. He seems Telement Doe as well. Looks a bit like Donnie. A bit. The resemblance is astounding. Merely the eyes. Yes, but that's more than enough, mon cher. Men kill over eyes like those. He is well shaped, too. Which is toujours gay. Beautiful hands. Wrists. You were very observant tonight. One notices, unless one is unwell, and apropos, Robbie, one must be dead not to notice. And I, mon cher, I've never felt better in my life. Come here. There was a pause. I heard the rustling of satin moving closer to the door. I peered into their sitting room. The two men stood side by side in front of the fire, their backs to me. Mortimer wore only a red bath towel tied around his waist. A Goodbody in a blue robe, stroking his friend's bare back. Donnie loves him. Yes, thank God, at long last. Do you think he knows? Which he? Either he. Neither knows, Knifes. That's why they get on so well. And our excuse. I love you. That will do nicely. It's served these 20 years. At that moment, the red towel fell to the floor, and naked Mortimer sat chuckling. Goodbody, shedding the robe, knelt uncovered beside the two, kissed and caressed. I left them to each other. Back in my rooms, alone, under my quilt. I was happy. They are wrong, I thought. I know I love him. I would die for him. Love makes us equals. When I woke the next morning, the room was unusually bright. The air seemed phosphorescent. Recognizing the glow, I leaped from the bed to open the drapes. The world had been transformed by a heavy blanket of snow. There were drifts on the portico, and the sea looked like a silver platter. No wind disturbed the icicled yews. The fluttering sunlight danced in their boughs like a dove. Danough Gaylord, Goodbody, and Mortimer were walking toward the house from the shore. I could chart their course from the footsteps in the snow. I rushed to dress for breakfast. We ate in the main dining room while we talked and laughed, devouring omelets. Wondrous, strange smells wafted from the kitchen. Henry and Brian had begun preparations for our Thanksgiving celebration. Plans were formulated, discussed, dismissed, or accepted, according to this or that whim. We all agreed on ice skating after breakfast. When Danough announced he planned 2 hours' work following luncheon, a Goodbody threw a roll at him, threatening to follow with the compote if he didn't immediately change his mind. He relented. A sleigh ride was seconded by Keys. The Uranus was referred to. I requested more information. Each contributes something to the banquet. I can't do anything. I somehow doubt that. What Mortimer means, Robbie, is each does the best he can, as in life. Not at breakfast, Denver's. No metaphysics before Vespers. Well, dear, that takes care of you for today. Pass the toast, Keys, and do me a favor. Hum Vivaldi's winter music without making any sound. Mortimer booed. And as for you, my black prince, I cannot wait. Two palais. Far too much and far too often, if you ask me. Well, sensibly. A good body, no one has. Pass the compote, gently, please. We skated on the portion of the lake closest to the cottage. It took but a moment for Lonnie and Joshua to clean away the loose snow, and while Denvers and Keys made a snowman, we others skated in circles, overlapping and crossing one another. Brian arrived at 11, bringing hot chocolate, red apples, and gingerbread. Long icicles hung from the wych elm. We snapped them free to form wings for a snow angel. We took turns pulling one another on a brightly painted sled, and laughed so merrily that Joshua had to run to the main house for a key to the cottage and the facilities. Clumps of snow dropped from the golden rain tree, its silvered branches raised in joyous witness to our pleasure. And by noon, the conversation turned to Thanksgiving dinner. Henry had announced on a beautifully scripted menu card a turkey, a boloton stuffed with a French pâté dressing, and the usual holiday trimmings. We returned to the main house, which was deliciously warm after the hours out of doors, and we agreed to postpone the sleigh ride until the next day. After luncheon, consommé, madeleine, and Rajnas sautés. We retired to our rooms for a nap and meditation before assembling in Library 1 at 3, while I nervously practiced my selection for the musicale. I could hear Mortimer and Goodbody laughing over some privatity. At 3, refreshed, we 5 convened. Keys, in a burst of communal spirit, suggested we devise an entertainment. Denver stood and commanded our attention by clapping his hands thrice and recited, "What wisdom stirs among us? Come, sir, now I am for you again. Pray you sit by us and tell us a tale." I responded, knowing the play, the scene by heart, it being a favorite of my father's. "Merry or sad shalt be." Denver's, delighted, continued, making it clear to the others by nodding and silently clapping that I was on the mark. "As merry as you will." I smiled proudly of myself and pleased to be the one to declare, "A sad tale's best for winter. I have one of spirits and goblins." Denver sat regally commanding while lovingly assenting. "Let's have that, good sir. Come on, sit down. Come on and do your best to fright me with your spirits. You're powerful at it," I whispered. "There was a man. He spoke with me." "Nay, come sit down then on." I sat by him. "Dwelt by a churchyard." "I will tell it softly. Yon crickets shall not hear it." I pointed to the other 3, much to their merriment, and he concluded, "Come on, then, and give to me in mine ear." Only Mortimer could not name the play. When told, he shrugged and said in a haughty manner with a suddenly acquired stage French accent, "Murdy, Shakespeare, not a point on our malheur." We formed a circle and read the play aloud. I had recently collected all the volumes of his plays, distributing 5 copies of The Winter's Tale. It took but a moment. My efficiency drew favorable comments from my employer. I was pleased. Everyone noticed how seriously I was taking my position. It was my first job. I was proud to be doing it well. At 5, we returned to our rooms to prepare for dinner. I bathed, practiced my pieces, and for the second time, donned formal attire with Ambrose's invaluable assistance. I was still anxious about that musicale, Everything was going so well, I dreaded making an ass of myself. While he struggled with my tie, I fidgeted absently, raising my hand to scratch my nose. He slapped my wrist. "You are not paying any mind, Mr. Robert. This is the fourth go at your bloody tie, and it still looks like you slept in it." I apologized. He grunted. I stood rigidly to attention and statue-like. Thought of Hermione. We succeeded after a meticulous going over. With several brushes and a comb, I was anointed, scented. I was permitted to descend to the sitting room, where we were together at 6 for cocktails. When I entered, buffed and shiny, all the faces turned and smiled. "A perfect entrance, lad," Mortimer chuckled, dubbing me the fairest. "The better angel is a main right fair." Considering the competition, I was truly honored and told them as much. The good body, raising his glass, solemnly intoned, "Gaudimus ictar javentum idem." Danough Gaylord stood alone, lost in thought, by the piano, stroking the languorous kale. Teo called us into dinner at 6:30. We finished at 10. It was a feast as baroque as anything in Heisman's. Every dish contained an exciting surprise for me, including the turkey. I was puzzled during the carving until I realized that the bird's skeletal framework had been magically removed. When I voiced my amazement at its not collapsing, there was a toast to the winged wonder and another refrain of Goodbody's paean to youth. We took pumpkin pie and coffee and liqueurs in the sitting room. Keys promptly fell asleep. We discussed the route of the next day's sleigh ride. I watched Goodbody and Mortimer affectionately touch one another casually and frequently during the course of the conversation. At one point, Mortimer called Goodbody dear, inflecting the word as Keys never had. Bewildering thoughts I had not confronted surfaced. I could not mask them. Their relationship went beyond the classical ideal of perfect friendship that I had envisioned between myself and Danough Gaylord. Their love seemed passionate, like that of a man for a woman. The image of them together, naked, skidded across my mind, merging with the drawings in the cave. I glanced at Danough Gaylord. I wanted to touch him, to hold and be held by him. If Goodbody and Mortimer could exchange their expressions of love openly, why could not we? Was something wrong with me? Standing abruptly in the middle of a story Goodbody was relating, I could not catch my breath. I walked to the window and stared, unseen, into my own reflection. I was confused by my thoughts and feelings. If they guided me to him and I denied them, there was nothing but the sorrow of a barren life devoid of truth. I could not believe he desired any life but a truthful one, yet each time I touched him, he recoiled. He could not love me as I loved him. Goodbody and Mortimer were wrong to think so. Perhaps it was for the best. He did not need someone whose demons covered insensate fears. But when he was with me, I never knew bad dreams. "Robbie, are you all right?" I turned to him, enveloped by the loving warmth in his voice. I wanted to rest my head on his shoulder. I wanted to ask him why he didn't love me. I wanted to ask him if there was anything I could do to make him love me. "Yes, Mr. Danough. I'm fine. Thank you, sir." Denver's suggested some exertion on our part. Keys, waking with a start, was the first to exit the sitting room and the first to enter the music room, where a great fire had been lit and where brandy poured into ornate crystal decanters awaited our pleasure. We drew lots to see who would first perform. I won. Walking to the piano, I announced in an even voice that my Chopin nocturne would be followed by a recitation of Whitman's, when I heard at the close of day. There was a buzz of anticipation which I found encouraging. I sat in front of the open keyboard and arranged my music. All the while, drawing deep breaths. I played very well. A few technical blunders, and with enough musical intelligence to inform the piece and carry it above an exercise in fingering and tempo rubato. The applause went as much to my teacher. My audience was so pleased with the Whitman poem, they demanded another. I recited the only other one I knew when I reached that last bitter line. Have you no thought, O dreamer, that it may be all a Maya illusion? My voice nearly broke. There was silence afterward. I remembered the agony that poem had engendered in me, and I could not look at anyone as I resumed my seat. The pain swelled anew. Dear Whitman, Denver sighed. No one understands as well as the poet how everything we do is instigated by an illusion. Do you agree, Mortimer? Of course. Only when we know our illusions can we find our truths. So, the poem is not a warning, I asked, but a statement of fact. More a definition of terms, Mortimer offered. The term of love's contract between one fallible mortal who knows his frailties and another whom he begs to understand and not expect what cannot be given. I see. Who's next? Danough stood as he did. Cale sprang from his lap and followed him to the piano, where they shared the bench. Danough played two toccatas from memory, one by Galuppi and one by Scarlatti. I was amazed at his mastery of the form and at his dramatic power. His offering excited me. I told him so. He laughed and claimed the company inspired him, but he was very pleased and did not attempt to conceal his pleasure. I was touched by his honesty. I wondered again where I was making my mistake. Goodbody and Mortimer performed together. They sang a group of operatic arias by Puccini, Verdi, and Bizet. Not only was Mortimer a wonderful pianist, but he also possessed a rich baritone, which he displayed in two duets with his friends, one from La Bohème and one from Les Pictures de Perelles. The later, with its ravishing melody, was repeated upon request, and we all hummed along. Like C.O. sons, dawn companions. Denver's caused great merriment with two Gilbert and Sullivan patter songs. A private buffoon was enchanting. As the song finished, he shuffled from the room, returning to sit at the piano and pound out 3 rags by Scott Joplin, with perfect rhythmical swing. Danough bounded to his feet and danced the length of the room, with a startled Cale in his arms. He moved splendidly, swaying to the music. I gaped. Mortimer clapped in time and hooted with glee, poking me into joining him. He should go on the stage, I shouted. Don't think we haven't tried. He's a brilliant actor, too. When the music ended, Danough looked exhilarated, and not the least embarrassed by his spontaneous display. He was radiant, and I loved him again, and more for several new reasons. And then we took a short interval for refreshment, while Keyes prepared himself for his contribution. It was part of the ritual that he was lasted. We settled into our chairs as he took his place. Mailer's Resurrection Symphony, he announced. And so it was. Lush and complex as a Liszt transcription, his performance would have enthralled the great Viennese maestro himself. I sat suspended between terror and exultation, while he led me into the very presence of death. Wind swept me outside time into an eternity of love and salvation. I was enraptured. It was the eternity of my childhood. Before his last chords had faded, Keyes, hugged by everyone, was helped to his room by Denver's, silenced We kissed one another goodnight and parted fulfilled. In my room, I was surprised by the clock. Keys had played for over 2 hours. I undressed and got into bed immediately. I tried not to think of anything that would deflate the sense of elation. Something miraculous had occurred. I would never be the same again. A death, my own, everyone's, was defeated, comforted. I slept. The remaining days passed too quickly. I scanned my journal in an attempt to grasp them, but they fragment into bright moments, like a handful of luminous stones flung wide. The next day we took a sled, pulled by raven black bays, to Sterling Harbor. The weather, calm and cold, was held at bay by thick fur blankets and flasks of hot chocolate and plum brandy. The two fast friends sat in front, holding the reins. Danough Gaylord and I sat together in the rear. "I've never been so happy," I said. "Not in my whole life." "Your life is just beginning, Robbie. May it never end." "I'll drink to that." "Mortimer, you drink to Dr. Quackenbos." While we walked along the beach the next afternoon, those two in front, we two behind, I thanked him for taking me into his home. He was the grateful one, he said. There hadn't been such peace at Gaywyck for years. I took him at his word and was catapulted into a spiraling joy. I wanted to hug him. Instead, I knelt, collected flat stones, and skidded them across the rippling surface of the gray sea. I told him about the letter from my father. He responded hesitantly that he had looked into my mother's condition and wanted my permission to move her to a private nursing home. "Your father has already given his approval." I was speechless with gratitude, far beyond words. "Will that help, sir, do you think?" "It will be more pleasant for her, and it can't hurt." "Is it the same place your mother stayed?" "No," he answered after a pause. I detected his discomfort and changed the subject. "Has there ever been a kinder, more considerate friend?" I wondered, looking out across the still rippling surface of the sea. We played whist. We talked. We read aloud. We talked. We made music. We told stories. We shared 4 days. 4 short days. And then they left. I was grief-stricken. I felt abandoned. They had made me a part of themselves. They had listened to me. They had sought my opinions. They had respected me as an honored peer. But shall we wear these honors for a day, or shall they last, and we rejoice in them? I sat by the still flickering fire in Goodbody and Mortimer's sitting room, a Shakespeare open on my lap, Kale by my side. I sat in that place because it had sheltered virtue and tenderness. My tears fell in the flames. I fancied images of limbs entwined and heard whispered sighs. At the center of myself, a bubble of sensation formed, rose and burst, flooding me with warmth. For the second time in my life, passion erupted. Now I knew it by its name. Gay Mysteries audiobooks. I think it is easy to hate a label, but a face humanizes the word. So this effort is twofold: to offer comfort to those like myself that your world didn't end because you don't fit into the view of acceptable society on both sides, and in hopes of helping those with family that are LGBTQ, that it doesn't mean we are aliens from the child they once knew. Reassure them so they can maybe be supportive at the same time, being true to their values.